The dust never settled at the Red Rock relay station, not with stagecoaches thundering through 3 times daily, and riders coming in at all hours needing fresh mounts for the Pony Express route that cut through the Nevada territory like a lifeline to civilization. 19-year-old Nora Emerson had worked there for 8 months now, ever since her father's accident left him unable to manage the horses alone, and she had learned to read the rhythm of hoofbeats the way other girls read poetry. She was hauling water from the well on that scorching July morning in 1862 when she first noticed the pattern. The same rider, the same chestnut mare with the white blaze, the same time every afternoon for the past week. Most cowboys on the circuit rotated their routes or varied their schedules, but this one arrived like clockwork at 2:30. Stayed exactly long enough to swap horses and drink a dipper of water, then rode out heading east toward the Mormon settlement. Nora set the bucket down and wiped her brow with her sleeve, squinting against the relentless Nevada sun. Las Vegas was little more than a cluster of adobe buildings and tents strung along the old Spanish Trail, established just 8 years earlier as a Mormon fort before being abandoned and slowly repopulated by a mix of ranchers, miners, and opportunists. The relay station sat on the outskirts, positioned strategically where the desert started to give way to scrubland, and the mountains rose purple in the distance. Her father, Thomas Emerson, emerged from the stable with a bridle that needed mending. His left leg dragged slightly, the permanent reminder of being crushed between a spooked horse and the corral fence. He was a weathered man of 43 who had spent his entire adult life working with horses, first in Missouri, then following opportunity west after Nora's mother died of cholera 5 years back. That Appleton boy coming through again? He asked, nodding toward the dust cloud approaching from the west. It is not the Appleton boy, Nora said, watching the rider materialize out of the heat shimmer. Different entirely. As the horse and rider drew closer, Nora could make out more details. The man sat easy in the saddle despite what must have been hours of riding. He wore typical cowboy attire, worn leather chaps, a faded blue shirt dark with sweat, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. But there was something about the way he moved with the horse, as if they were a single creature, that caught her attention. He reined in at the hitching post and dismounted in one fluid motion. When he looked up, Nora found herself staring into eyes the color of the sky just after dawn, that particular shade of blue that made promises about the day ahead. "Afternoon," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that suggested Texas or maybe Oklahoma. "Need a fresh mount." "Heading to the Meadows settlement. We have got 3 available," Nora replied, forcing herself to look away and focus on business. "How far are you riding?" "Another 20 miles today. Need something with stamina." Thomas had limped over by then, sizing up the tired mare. "She is a good animal." "You have been riding her hard, though." "Yes, sir. Making up time. Got delayed 2 days back by a flash flood that washed out part of the trail." The cowboy pulled off his hat and ran a hand through dark hair dampened with sweat. "Name is Cade Anderson. I am working the cattle drive route for the Morrison outfit out of California. We are moving a herd through and I am scouting ahead for water and grazing." "Thomas Emerson. This is my daughter Nora." Thomas gestured toward the corral. "The big bay gelding would suit you. Strong legs, good wind. $2 for the rental and exchange." Cade pulled coins from his pocket and counted them into Thomas's palm. His hands were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who worked for his living. When his eyes met Nora's again, she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the heat. "Much obliged," Cade said. "I will bring him back through tomorrow, same time if that suits." "We will have him ready," Thomas replied, Nora found her voice. "There is water in the bucket there, freshly drawn. Appreciate it, miss." Cade walked over to the well and drank deeply from the dipper, and Nora noticed despite herself the strong line of his jaw, the breadth of his shoulders. She had seen plenty of cowboys and drovers come through, but none had made her pulse quicken quite this way. He saddled the bay quickly and efficiently, checking the girth and stirrups with practiced ease. Before mounting, he looked back at Nora one more time. "See you tomorrow, then." "Tomorrow," she echoed. True to his word, Cade Anderson returned the next afternoon at precisely 2:30. And the afternoon after that. And every afternoon for the next 2 weeks. At first, Nora told herself it was simply the nature of his work, scouting the route repeatedly as the cattle drive slowly made its way east. But as the days passed, she began to notice things. The way his visits stretched slightly longer each time. How he always found a reason to linger, checking the horses' hooves more thoroughly than necessary or asking detailed questions about trail conditions he surely already knew. The way his eyes sought hers even when he was speaking to her father. On the 8th day, he brought her a handful of wildflowers he claimed to have found growing near a hidden spring. "Seemed ashamed to leave them blooming where nobody would see," he said, and there was something in his voice that suggested he was not talking only about flowers. On the 12th day, he arrived with news. "Herd is settled about 15 miles west. We are holding them there for a few days, letting them graze and build strength before the push through the desert stretch." "So you will not need to scout ahead then," Nora said, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. Cade looked at her directly, those dawn blue eyes steady. "No, I reckon I will not, but I might still need to change horses. Man likes to rotate his mounts, keep them fresh." Her father, mending tack nearby, made a sound that might have been a cough or might have been a laugh. "We are always here," Nora said softly. That evening, after Cade had ridden out and the sun was painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, Thomas sat down heavily on the bench outside the stable and looked at his daughter with an expression caught between amusement and concern. "That boy is not scouting anymore," he said bluntly. Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the lingering warmth of the day. "I know. You fancy him," she considered lying, then decided against it. Her father deserved honesty. Is that foolish? I barely know him." Thomas was quiet for a long moment, watching the mountains darken as shadows crept across them. "Your mother and I knew each other 3 days before I asked her father for permission to court her. Sometimes you just know. But Nora, he is a drover. That is a wandering life. I know that too." She sat down beside him, her work dress dusty and stained. "But he keeps coming back. For now. What happens when the cattle drive moves on?" It was the question Nora had been avoiding, the reality she did not want to face. Drovers moved with the herds, following work and seasons. They were not the kind of men who settled down at relay stations in the middle of the Nevada desert. But the next afternoon, when Cade rode in at 2:30, he surprised her. "Miss Emerson," he said formally, hat in his hands, "I was wondering if you might take a walk with me. Just down by the creek bed. I will have you back before sundown, and your father is welcome to come along if it is more proper." Thomas, who had been watching the whole exchange with barely concealed interest, waved a hand. "Creek is not more than a quarter mile. You two go on. I trust you to behave like a gentleman, Mr. Anderson." "Yes, sir. You have my word." The creek was little more than a trickle this time of year, cutting a shallow path through rocks and sparse vegetation. But there were cottonwood trees growing along its banks, offering precious shade, and the sound of moving water was a luxury in this parched landscape. They walked in silence at first, Nora acutely aware of Cade's presence beside her, the careful distance he maintained. Finally, he spoke. "I have been thinking about how to say this for days now, probably going to make a mess of it anyway." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Miss Emerson, Nora, I did not come back every day because I needed horses. I came back because from the first moment I saw you hauling that water bucket like it weighed nothing, with the sun in your hair and dust on your dress. I could not get you out of my mind." Nora's heart was hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. "You could have said something sooner." "Did not want to presume, did not want to be disrespectful. Your father trusts me and I would not want to abuse that." He took a breath. "But the herd is moving out in 3 days and I could not leave without telling you how I feel. Even if nothing can come of it, I needed you to know." "And how do you feel?" The question came out barely above a whisper. Cade took a step closer, still maintaining propriety but near enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, the sun creases at their corners. "I feel like I found something in this desert I did not even know I was looking for. I feel like every mile I ride away from that relay station is a mile too far. I feel like I am 24 years old and I have been drifting my whole life, and now suddenly I know what it might mean to have a place to come home to." The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw. Nora thought about all the things she should say, all the practical objections she should raise. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "I wait for 2:30 every day. I watch the western horizon starting at noon. When I hear hoofbeats, I hope it is you, and when it is, everything seems brighter somehow. Is that foolish? If it is, then we are both fools." He smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. "Nora, I do not have much to offer. I have been working cattle drives since I was 16, saving money but not enough to buy land or start a ranch. I drift from job to job, following the herds. But I am a hard worker and I am honest, and I would treat you right. If you would give me a chance, I would like to court you properly. Write to you, visit when I can, see if this feeling between us is real or just desert heat playing tricks." "It is real," Nora said with certainty. "At least for me, it is real. For me too." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. Even through the calluses, his touch was gentle. "Then when this drive is finished, I will come back. Might take 2 months, maybe 3. We are taking the herd to the Colorado Territory, but I will come back, Nora, I swear it. I will wait," she promised. They walked back as the sun began its descent, hands clasped, talking about everything and nothing. Cade told her about growing up in Texas after his parents died of fever, being raised by an uncle who taught him to rope and ride. About choosing the drover's life because it paid better than ranch handwork, and he had dreams of saving enough to buy his own spread someday. About long nights sleeping under stars so thick they looked like spilled salt, and mornings when the sunrise set the whole world on fire. Nora told him about Missouri and the life they had left behind, about her mother's laugh and her father's stubborn determination to rebuild after tragedy, about learning to love the harsh beauty of the Nevada desert, the way survival here meant paying attention to every detail, reading the land and sky and animals, about wanting more than just water buckets and horse swapping, though she could not quite name what that more might be. When they reached the relay station, Thomas was lighting the lanterns against the gathering dusk. He looked at their clasped hands and nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had already suspected. "Mr. Emerson," Cade said, "I have been honest with your daughter and I will be the same with you. I care for her. I would like your permission to court her." "You are leaving in 3 days," Thomas said flatly. "Yes, sir, but I will be back." "That is what they all say." Then the next job comes along, the next herd, the next town. There was no anger in Thomas's voice, just weary experience. I have seen it before. Pa, Nora started, but Cade squeezed her hand gently. You are right to be skeptical, sir. All you have is my word, and words are cheap. So I will not try to convince you with promises. I will just say this. I have been drifting since I was 16 years old, and in all that time, I never found a reason to stop. Now I have. Whether you believe that or not is your choice, but I am asking for the chance to prove it. Thomas studied him for a long moment, then looked at his daughter's face. Whatever he saw there seemed to settle something. Court her then. Write letters. Come back when you can. But if you hurt her, Mr. Anderson, I do not care how many miles separate us. I will find you. I would expect nothing less, sir. The next 3 days passed in a blur of precious moments stolen between station duties. Cade came by each afternoon, and they walked or talked or simply sat in companionable silence under the cottonwoods. He told her about the trail ahead, the rivers they would cross, the mountains they would skirt. She told him about the travelers who came through, the stories they brought from California and points east. On the final evening, Cade gave her a small leather pouch. It is not much, he said almost apologetically, but I wanted you to have something. Inside was a piece of turquoise, roughly the size of her thumbnail, polished smooth by time and water. The blue-green stone caught the fading light and held it. I found it in a creek bed in Colorado 3 years ago, Cade explained. Been carrying it for luck, but I think maybe I was carrying it for you, even before I knew you existed. It matches your eyes, that particular blue-green like water in sunlight. Nora closed her fingers around the stone, feeling its smoothness, its weight. I will keep it close, and I will wait for you, Cade Anderson, however long it takes. He kissed her then, a brief, gentle press of lips that nonetheless sent warmth flooding through her entire body. I am already counting the days until I can come back. The cattle drive moved out the next morning, a river of lowing cattle and shouting drovers, dust rising in great clouds that hung in the still air. Nora watched from the relay station until the last rider disappeared over the eastern horizon, her hand tight around the turquoise stone in her pocket. Thomas came to stand beside her. You really care for him? I do. Then we will hope he is a man of his word. The first letter arrived 6 weeks later, carried by a Pony Express rider who had picked it up at a trading post in the Colorado Territory. Nora's hands shook as she opened it, recognizing Cade's name scrawled on the outside. The handwriting was rough but legible, the words straightforward. Nora, we made it through the desert without losing more than a handful of cattle, which the trail boss considers a victory. Colorado is green compared to Nevada, with grass that grows thick and rivers that run cold and fast. The herd is fattening up nicely. We should reach the buyers in another 3 weeks. I think about you every day. When I see water that blue-green color like your eyes, when I see the dawn sky, when I see anything beautiful in this hard land. I am saving my pay from this drive, starting to think seriously about what comes next. Will write again when I can. Yours, Cade Anderson. Nora read the letter so many times she memorized it, then carefully folded it and kept it in the tin box where she stored her few precious possessions. She wrote back immediately, though she had no idea when her response might reach him or if he would still be at the same location. The days settled into a new rhythm. Stagecoaches still came through 3 times daily. Riders still needed fresh mounts. The work continued, relentless and necessary. But now Nora had something to look forward to beyond the daily routine, a future that had shape and substance in her imagination. 7 weeks after the first letter, a second arrived. The herd had been delivered successfully. Cade and most of the crew were heading back west, but taking a different route, skirting south toward Arizona Territory before cutting back toward California. It would be another 6 weeks at least before he could make it back to Nevada. "I miss you," he wrote. "Missing someone is a strange thing. I never understood it before, but now I feel your absence like a weight I am carrying. The other drovers tease me about being distracted, about watching the horizon like I am expecting to see something. Maybe I am. Maybe I am looking for the future. I have been talking to Morrison, the outfit owner. He has offered me steady work, but it would mean more drives, more time away. I have not given him an answer yet. Need to talk to you first. Need to figure out what we are building together." Nora wrote back longer letters, filling pages with details about life at the relay station, about the travelers passing through, about her father's slowly improving leg, about the changing seasons as summer's brutal heat gave way to autumn's cooler temperatures. But mostly she wrote about her feelings, finding courage on paper that sometimes eluded her in person. "I think about what it means to build a life with someone," she wrote. "My mother used to say that love was not the butterflies and racing hearts of the beginning, though those were nice. She said real love was choosing someone every day, even when it was hard, even when the butterflies had flown away. I think about that often. I feel the butterflies when I think of you, Cade, but I also feel something deeper, something steadier. Like I would choose you not just today, but tomorrow and the day after and all the days beyond that, even knowing it might mean long absences and uncertainty. Even knowing the drover's life is hard, I would choose you anyway." 3 months after Cade had ridden east with the cattle drive, he returned to Las Vegas on a crisp November afternoon. Nora was mucking out stalls when she heard the hoofbeats, and something made her look up, hope flaring in her chest. He sat astride the same bay gelding he had rented that last day, and when he saw her, his face split into a grin that made him look years younger. "Miss me?" he called out. Nora dropped the pitchfork and ran, propriety forgotten, closing the distance between them. Cade dismounted quickly and caught her in his arms, spinning her once before setting her down carefully. "You came back," she said, even though she had believed he would, had held onto faith through the long weeks. "Told you I would. I am a man of my word." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "God, it is good to see you." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper, and Nora felt like she was falling and flying simultaneously. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against hers. "We need to talk. I have decisions to make, and I want you to be part of making them." Thomas emerged from the station house then, moving faster than he had in months despite his injury. "Mr. Anderson, you kept your word." "Yes, sir, and I need to speak with you both if you have time." They sat around the rough wooden table in the station house, cups of coffee steaming in front of them. Outside, the desert stretched vast and empty, but inside, the future was taking shape. Cade pulled a leather satchel from his pack and emptied it on the table. Gold and silver coins spilled out, glinting in the lamplight. 3 years of saved wages, he said. $147. It is not a fortune, but it is a start. He looked directly at Thomas. "Sir, I love your daughter. I want to marry her with your blessing. And I want to stop drifting. I am done with the drover's life. I am ready to put down roots." Thomas was silent, letting Cade continue. "I have been thinking about this the entire drive back. The relay station does good business, but it is too much work for one man with an injury and his daughter. You need help. I know horses as well as anyone, and I can handle the physical labor. I am proposing a partnership. I put in my savings, I provide the labor, and I get a share of the profits. We expand the operation, maybe add more corrals, take on more horses, bid for the male contract that is coming up for renewal, build something permanent. And marry my daughter," Thomas said. "Yes, sir, that most of all." Nora's heart was so full she thought it might burst. She had hoped Cade would return, had believed in his promises, but this was more than she had dared to imagine. Not just stolen moments between cattle drives, but a real future, a life built together. Thomas picked up one of the coins, turning it over in his fingers. "This is your entire savings. Everything you have worked for. You would risk it all on a relay station and a girl you have known for a matter of weeks." "It is not a risk if I am sure," Cade replied steadily. "And I am sure. About the station, about the work, about Nora. I am sure about all of it." "Pa," Nora said softly, "I love him. I know it is fast, I know it seems sudden, but it is real." Thomas looked between them, seeing the certainty in their faces, the way they leaned toward each other, even sitting apart. He thought about his own youth, about the girl he had known 3 days before proposing, about the life they had built together before fever took her. "All right," he said finally. "We will draw up a partnership agreement. Fair shares, equal work. We expand carefully, do not overextend. And you treat my daughter right, Mr. Anderson." "Cade," he corrected gently. "If we are going to be family, you should call me Cade. And I will treat her right, sir. You have my word, and I think you know by now that means something." They married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Las Vegas, with a traveling preacher who came through once a month to tend to the spiritual needs of the scattered population. Nora wore a dress of deep blue that she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar that had been her mother's. Cade wore his best clothes, which were still just clean work clothes, but he looked at Nora like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. Thomas gave her away, walking her down the short aisle with only a slight limp, pride evident in every line of his weathered face. A handful of townspeople attended, mostly regular customers and a few neighbors from nearby ranches. "I take you, Nora Emerson, to be my wife," Cade said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to choose you every day in good times and hard, to build a life with you, to work beside you, to love you as long as I am breathing." "I take you, Cade Anderson, to be my husband," Nora replied, her own voice strong. "I promise to stand with you, to trust in what we are building together, to love you through all the days ahead, however they come." The preacher pronounced them married, and when Cade kissed her, Nora tasted salt and dust and the promise of a future she had barely dared to imagine 8 months ago, when she first noticed a pattern in the rhythm of hoofbeats. They spent their wedding night in a room at the small boarding house in town, a luxury that felt almost scandalous after months of hard work and Spartan living. But Cade had insisted, wanting to give Nora at least one night that felt special, set apart from the ordinary. In the lamplight, with the sounds of the town muted by distance and walls, they learned each other in the way of newly married couples, with tenderness and passion intertwined, with whispered words and shared laughter and moments of profound connection that went beyond the physical. "I found you," Cade whispered against her hair as they lay tangled together afterward. "In the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, I found you. How is that possible?" "Maybe we found each other," Nora replied. "Maybe that is how it works. Two people drifting until suddenly they are not anymore." They returned to the relay station the next morning and threw themselves into work. With Cade's money and labor, they expanded rapidly. He built 2 additional corrals, allowing them to keep more horses in rotation. He negotiated with ranchers from surrounding areas to supply quality stock. He charmed the stage line representatives into giving them a larger contract, guaranteeing more regular business. Thomas, freed from the most physically demanding work, focused on the bookkeeping and customer relations, his natural friendliness and years of experience making him invaluable. Nora continued to manage the day-to-day operations, but now with Cade's partnership, the endless labor felt less overwhelming. By spring of 1863, the Red Rock relay station was thriving. They had 12 horses in steady rotation, contracts with 2 different stage lines, and a growing reputation for reliability. Money was still tight, luxuries non-existent, but they were building something solid. Nora discovered she was pregnant in May, and the news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. Her mother had died young, though not from childbirth, and the realities of frontier life meant medical help was scarce and uncertain. But Cade's reaction when she told him dissolved her fears into pure happiness. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. He placed a hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Nora, I did not think I could be happier than I already was, but I was wrong." "You are not worried?" she asked. "Of course I am worried. I am terrified something might happen to you, but I am also more excited than I have ever been in my life." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We are making a family, a real family." Thomas was equally pleased, already talking about grandchildren and teaching them to ride before they could properly walk. The months passed in a blur of work and preparation. Nora sewed tiny clothes from scraps of fabric. Cade built a cradle from cottonwood, sanding it smooth as glass so no splinter would threaten delicate skin. They converted a corner of their small quarters into a nursery of sorts, making space in their already crowded lives. The baby came in January of 1864, during a cold snap that frosted the desert morning in silver. Labor was long and difficult, and there were hours when Cade paced the main room like a caged animal, listening to Nora's cries and feeling helpless. The midwife they had brought in from town barked orders at Thomas to boil water and fetch clean cloth, her hand steady despite her 70 years. When the baby's first cry finally pierced the air, Cade nearly collapsed with relief. The midwife emerged looking satisfied. "You have got a son," she announced. "Strong lungs on him, and your wife is tired but well. Give me a minute to clean them up, then you can come in." Cade entered the room on shaking legs. Nora lay propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle, and when Cade looked down at his son's red, wrinkled face, he felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. "He is perfect," he breathed. "He is loud," Nora said with a tired laugh, "and hungry. But yes, he is perfect." She looked up at Cade with exhausted joy. "We should name him Thomas after Pa, Thomas Anderson." The old man, standing in the doorway, cleared his throat roughly. "That is a fine name." Little Thomas, who they quickly began calling Tommy, proved to be exactly as loud and hungry as his first moments suggested. But he was also healthy and alert, his eyes focusing on faces with surprising quickness, his tiny hands grasping fingers with unexpected strength. Cade took to fatherhood with the same determination he brought to everything. He paced the floor during colicky nights, sang off-key lullabies, changed diapers without complaint. He worked from dawn to dusk at the station, then spent his evenings with his wife and son, marveling at every small change, every tiny milestone. "I used to wonder what I was working for," he told Nora one evening as they sat watching Tommy sleep in his cradle. "Why I was saving money, what the point was of all the long hours and hard labor. Now I know. I was working toward this, toward you, toward him, toward this life." The relay station continued to grow. By 1865, they had added a small stable for overnight horse boarding, capitalizing on increased traffic through Las Vegas as the war back east ended and people began moving west in greater numbers. They hired a young man named Peter to help with the workload, allowing Nora to spend more time with Tommy while still managing the business side of things. Thomas's leg had improved considerably with less physical strain, and he took great joy in his grandson. teaching the boy to recognize different horse breeds before he could even talk properly, sitting him on gentle ponies before he turned two. "You are spoiling him," Nora chided, though without heat. "That is what grandparents are for," Thomas replied cheerfully, bouncing Tommy on his knee. Cade and Nora fell into a rhythm, their love deepening from the passionate urgency of those first months into something steadier and more profound. They worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's needs, communicating with glances and half-finished sentences. They disagreed sometimes, of course, about how to discipline Tommy, about business decisions, about 100 small domestic matters. But they had learned to talk through conflicts, to listen to each other, to find compromises, on quiet evenings, after Tommy was asleep and the day's work was done. They would sit outside and watch the stars emerge over the desert. Sometimes they talked about the future, making plans and dreaming dreams. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, content in each other's presence. "You ever miss it?" Nora asked one night. "The droving, the freedom of being on the trail." Cade considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. Wake up, ride, sleep, repeat. No complicated decisions, no worries beyond the next river crossing. But I do not miss the loneliness, and I do not miss not having you. This life we have built, Nora, it is worth everything I gave up. It is worth more than I ever imagined having." In the spring of 1866, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. Tommy was now 2 years old, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity who kept them all running. The pregnancy was easier this time, or perhaps Nora was just more confident in her body's ability to do what needed doing. Their daughter arrived in December, a week before Christmas, in half the time Tommy had taken and with far less drama. She was tiny and perfect, with Cade's blue eyes and Nora's dark hair. "Caroline," Nora said, looking down at the baby. "Caroline Anderson." "After your mother?" Cade asked softly. Nora's mother had been named Carol. "Close enough. I want her to have something of the woman she never got to meet." Tommy was initially suspicious of the tiny intruder who claimed so much of his mother's attention. But Cade made sure to spend extra time with his son, taking him on short rides, teaching him to handle a brush on the gentler horses, making him feel important and included. The relay station had become more than just a business by now. It was a community hub, a place where travelers could count on honest dealings and reliable service. Nora kept a pot of coffee on the stove and sometimes baked bread that she sold to stage passengers. Cade's reputation for fair pricing and quality horses spread along the trail networks. They were prospering in a modest way, never rich but comfortable, secure in a way that had seemed impossible in those first hard months. Thomas turned 50 in 1867 and announced he was thinking about retirement, or at least semi-retirement. "You two do not need me anymore," he said. "You have built something good here, strong, and I am getting old for this kind of work." "We will always need you, Pa," Nora protested. "And besides, what would you do with yourself?" "I have been thinking about that. There is a widow in town, Catherine Murphy. Her husband died 2 years back, left her with a small house and a vegetable garden. We have been talking when I go in for supplies. She is good company, and she makes a fine apple pie." Nora stared at her father, then broke into a delighted laugh. "Pa, are you courting?" Thomas had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I suppose I might be. Your mother has been gone more than 10 years now, Nora. I will always love her, but I think she would understand that I get lonely sometimes, that maybe there is room in an old man's heart for companionship." "She would want you to be happy," Nora said firmly. "And if Mrs. Murphy makes you happy, then I am glad." Thomas married Catherine Murphy in a quiet ceremony in February of 1868. She was a pleasant woman of 45, practical and warm, who took to being a step-grandmother with enthusiasm. They moved into her house in town, and Thomas came out to the relay station a few times a week to help and to see his grandchildren, but the day-to-day operations were now fully in Cade and Nora's hands. "It is strange," Nora said one evening, "being completely on our own. I have lived with my father my entire life." "We are not alone, though," Cade pointed out. "We have each other. We have Tommy and Caroline. We have this place we have built together. That is a different kind of family, but it is still family." Tommy turned 5 in 1869 and started attending the small school that had opened in Las Vegas. Caroline was 3, talking in complete sentences and already showing signs of her father's stubborn determination and her mother's practical nature. The relay station continued its steady success, and Cade and Nora began to talk seriously about the future. "The Transcontinental Railroad is almost finished," Cade said one night, referring to the massive construction project that had been dominating news for years. "When it is done, it will change everything. Fewer people traveling by stage, fewer need for relay stations." "Are you saying we should sell?" Nora asked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. She loved this place, this life they had built. "No, I am saying we need to adapt. We are already boarding horses, doing some breaking and training. What if we focused more on that? Became less of a relay station and more of a proper ranch? We could buy more land, expand the herds, breed quality horses. There will always be a market for good horses, railroad or not." They talked long into the night, planning and calculating. By the time dawn broke over the desert, they had the outlines of a plan. Over the next 3 years, they gradually transformed their business. They bought an additional section of land, scraping together money and taking out a loan against the property. They built a larger stable and better fencing. They acquired breeding stock, focusing on strong, intelligent animals that could thrive in the harsh climate. Cade's years of experience with horses proved invaluable, and his reputation drew buyers from across the territory. By 1872, the Anderson Horse Ranch was established, still operating the relay station on a reduced scale, but primarily focused on raising and training horses. Tommy, now 8, was his father's shadow, learning everything about horses with the single-minded intensity of childhood. Caroline, at 6, was more interested in the business side, often found sitting with her mother going over accounts. "She has your head for numbers," Cade observed one evening, watching Caroline carefully writing out figures in a ledger Nora had given her for practice. "And your stubbornness," Nora replied with affection. "Do you remember when you first started coming to the station? How you kept showing up every day, even when you had no real reason to." "Best decision I ever made," Cade said, pulling her close. "Riding 20 miles out of my way every afternoon just to see your face. The other drovers thought I was crazy." "Were you crazy?" "Probably. But the best kind of crazy." He kissed her temple. "You know what I remember most? The way you looked at me that first day, like you were trying to figure out if I was worth trusting. And then gradually, day by day, I saw that wariness fade into something else, something that looked like possibility." "It was possibility," Nora said. "The possibility of something I had not even known I wanted. A partner, a love, a life that was bigger than just surviving." They stood together in the doorway of their home, watching the sun set over land that was truly theirs now, land they had built on and improved and made productive. The harsh desert had become familiar, almost beautiful in its stark majesty. This place that had once seemed like the end of the earth was now the center of their world. In 1873, Nora discovered she was pregnant once more, a surprise given that Caroline was now 7, and they had assumed their family was complete. She was 30 years old and wondered if she was too old for another baby, but the midwife laughed at her concerns. "You are in your prime, Mrs. Anderson, strong and healthy. This baby will come just fine." She was right. In March of 1874, they welcomed another son whom they named Samuel. Tommy, now 10, took his role as big brother seriously, declaring he would teach Sam everything he needed to know about horses. Caroline, 8, was more skeptical about the noisy infant but gradually warmed to him when he proved capable of smiling at her. Cade was 41 now, his dark hair showing threads of gray at the temples, his face more deeply lined from years under the Nevada sun. But he was still strong, still capable of working dawn to dusk when needed. He looked at his wife, at his children, at the ranch they had built from nothing, and felt a contentment so profound it sometimes overwhelmed him. "Do you ever think about how things might have been different?" he asked Nora one night when Sam was a few months old. "If I had not been assigned to scout that particular route, if I had decided not to stop at that particular relay station, all the tiny choices that led to this, I think about it sometimes," Nora admitted, but not with regret, more with amazement. That out of all the possible paths our lives could have taken, we found the one that led us to each other. The ranch continued to grow through the 1870s. They hired additional hands to help with the workload as their reputation for quality horses spread. Tommy showed real talent for training, his patience and natural understanding making even difficult horses respond to him. Caroline announced at age 12 that she intended to be the ranch's business manager when she grew up, and given her grasp of accounts and negotiations, no one doubted she would be excellent at it. Thomas visited regularly, usually bringing Catherine, who had become a genuine grandmother to the children. He was in his late 50s now, moving more slowly, but still sharp-minded and opinionated. He loved to sit with Cade and discuss bloodlines and training techniques, to regale the grandchildren with stories of the old days when Las Vegas was barely more than a cluster of tents. In the spring of 1879, they faced their first serious crisis. A late freeze followed by drought devastated the grazing lands. Water became scarce, and feed prices skyrocketed. They had to make hard decisions about which animals to keep and which to sell, about whether to take on more debt or cut back operations. Cade and Nora sat up late into the night multiple times, going over numbers, weighing options. The stress showed in the tension in their shoulders, the worry lines deepening on their faces. But they faced it together, presenting a united front even when they disagreed on the best path forward. "We have built this place once," Nora said finally. "We can do it again if we have to. We have survived worse." "Have we?" Cade asked tiredly. "We survived not knowing if we would ever see each other again. We survived starting with nothing but hope and hard work. We survived childbirth and injuries and 100 smaller disasters. We will survive this too." Her certainty steadied him. They made conservative choices, sold off some stock, tightened belts, worked longer hours. And gradually, as the drought broke and conditions improved, the ranch stabilized. They emerged from the crisis leaner but stronger, with a renewed appreciation for the precariousness of their livelihood and the importance of planning for hard times. The 1880s brought change to Nevada Territory, which became a state in 1864 and was continuing to develop. Las Vegas was growing, no longer the dusty outpost it had been when Nora first arrived. Railroads connected it to larger cities, bringing more commerce and more people. The Anderson Horse Ranch adapted, now supplying horses to mining operations, to the territorial militia, to wealthy buyers from California looking for quality stock. Tommy married in 1882 at age 18, a local girl named Elizabeth from a ranching family. They built a house on a corner of the ranch property, and Tommy officially became Cade's partner in the business, his name added to the deed and the contracts. Elizabeth proved to be a capable addition to the family, good with horses and unafraid of hard work. Caroline, now 16, was being courted by several young men from town, but she declared herself in no hurry to marry. "I have got too much to learn first," she said firmly. "The ranch needs me." Sam, at 8, was still young but already showing signs of inheriting his father's and brother's way with horses. He had a gift for spotting quality in a horse at a glance, an intuition that could not be taught. Cade turned 50 in 1884, a milestone that prompted reflection. He and Nora sat on the porch of their house one evening, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and purple, and took stock of the life they had built. 22 years, Cade said, since the day I first rode into that relay station and saw you hauling a water bucket. 22 years, Nora echoed. Sometimes it feels like forever. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. You have any regrets? She considered the question seriously. I regret the hard times, the times when money was so tight we did not know how we would make it. The droughts and freezes and all the things that tried to break us. But regret choosing this life. Never, not for a single moment. I used to be afraid, Cade admitted, that you would wake up one day and realize you had married a drifter who did not have much to offer except calloused hands and a stubborn refusal to quit. That you deserved better than a man who could barely write a decent letter, who did not have fancy manners or education. You offered me everything that mattered, Nora said firmly. Loyalty and love and partnership. You showed up every day, Cade, not just those first weeks when you kept finding excuses to change horses. Every day for 22 years you showed up. That is what matters. They had built something enduring, she thought, not just the ranch, though that was solid and successful, but a family, a legacy, a love that had weathered time and hardship and come out stronger. They had taken a chance on each other in the middle of the desert when neither had any guarantee it would work out, and they had made it work through sheer determination and genuine affection. Caroline married in 1886 to a banker's son from Las Vegas who respected her intelligence and supported her ambitions. She did not move far, just into town, and continued to manage the ranch's accounts and business dealings. Her husband, Robert, had a good head for investments and helped the family diversify, putting money into property and mining interests that provided additional security. Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1887 at the age of 65. He had lived to see his grandchildren grown and thriving, to see the relay station he had once struggled to maintain transform into a prosperous ranch. Catherine stayed in the house in town but remained close to the family, a beloved presence at holidays and celebrations. The loss of her father hit Nora hard. He had been a constant presence in her life, the anchor that had kept her steady through her mother's death and the hard years that followed. Cade held her through the grief, understanding that sometimes the only comfort was simply being present. He was proud of you, Cade told her one evening as they sat in the gathering dusk. Proud of what you built, who you became. He told me once that letting me marry you was the best business decision he ever made because it meant he got to see you happy. He liked you from the start, Nora said with a watery smile. He just pretended to be skeptical to test you. He told me later that he knew you were the real thing the day you laid out all your savings on the table and offered to risk everything on a relay station and a girl you barely knew. The years continued to pass, marked by the usual rhythms of ranch life and family. Sam, now in his teens, was proving to be the most talented horse trainer of all 3 children, with a gift that bordered on uncanny. Tommy and Elizabeth had 3 children of their own, expanding the family further. Caroline and Robert had twin daughters, sharp-eyed girls who reminded everyone of their mother. Cade and Nora settled into their 50s, still working but gradually allowing the younger generation to take on more responsibility. Their hair grayed, their joints ached on cold mornings, but their partnership remained as strong as ever. They had learned over the decades to communicate in the shorthand of long married couples, to navigate conflicts with practiced ease, to appreciate the small daily intimacies that make up a life shared. On a hot afternoon in July of 1892, Nora stood at the well drawing water, just as she had been doing 30 years earlier when Cade first saw her. She was 50 now, her hair more silver than brown, her hands roughened by decades of work. But when she heard hoofbeats and looked up to see Cade riding in from the far pasture, her heart still did that small leap, that flutter of recognition and love. He dismounted and walked over to her, moving with the slight stiffness of a man in his late 50s who had spent most of his life on horseback. But his smile was the same, and his eyes still held that particular shade of dawn sky blue. "Need any help with that water bucket?" he asked, echoing something he had said 1,000 times over the years. "I have been hauling water for 3 decades, Nora replied with mock severity. "I think I can manage. Maybe I just wanted an excuse to talk to you." He took the bucket from her anyway and carried it toward the house. "Did I ever tell you that I fell in love with you the first time I saw you hauling water? You looked so strong and capable and beautiful, and I thought, that is a woman worth changing horses for." "You have mentioned it once or twice," Nora said, following him with a smile. "Maybe 1,000 times." "Worth repeating. Some things are worth repeating." He set the bucket down and turned to face her, taking her work-roughened hands in his. 30 years ago this month, I rode into a relay station for no good reason except I wanted to see your face. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Nora corrected. "Best decision was coming back, choosing to stay, building this life with me." "Fair point." He pulled her close, and they stood together in the Nevada heat, surrounded by the ranch they had built, the family they had raised, the life they had created from nothing but determination and love. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner, a weekly tradition they had maintained for years. The house was loud and full, children running underfoot, conversations overlapping, the smell of roasting meat and baking bread filling the air. Tommy and Elizabeth, Caroline and Robert, Sam, who was courting a girl from town but not ready to announce anything official yet, the grandchildren in various ages and stages. Catherine, now in her 70s but still sharp-minded and present. Cade looked around the table, at all these people who existed because he had decided 30 years ago to take a chance on a girl at a relay station. Because he had kept coming back, day after day, finding excuses to change horses. Because Nora had chosen to believe in a drifter's promises and build a future on faith and hard work. "I want to say something," he announced, and the table gradually quieted. 30 years ago today, I met your mother," he said, nodding to his 3 children. "I was scouting ahead for a cattle drive, and I stopped at the Red Rock relay station to change horses. And there she was, hauling water like it weighed nothing, looking like everything I had not known I needed. I kept coming back, making up excuses, riding miles out of my way just to see her face again." "We know the story, Pa," Tommy said with affectionate exasperation. "Indulge an old man, because the point of the story is not just that I was lucky enough to find her. The point is that I chose to come back, that she chose to wait, that we chose every day to build this together. All of you," he gestured around the table, "are the result of those choices. This ranch, this family, this life. It all started because neither of us was afraid to take a chance. Nora reached over and squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with emotion. What your father is trying to say is that love is a choice. The butterflies and the racing hearts, those are nice. But real love is choosing someone every day, even when it is hard. Even when it means sacrifice and compromise and working through disagreements. We have had 30 years of choosing each other, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. The family raised glasses in a toast, the grandchildren joining in with their milk and water, everyone acknowledging the foundation that Cade and Nora had laid, the example they had set. Later, when the dishes were washed and the guests had departed and the house was finally quiet, Cade and Nora walked out to look at the stars. The desert night was cool, a relief after the day's heat, and the sky was so clear that the Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light. "Do you think we will have 30 more?" Nora asked, leaning against her husband. "I plan on it," Cade replied. "Though we might move a bit slower, need a few more naps in the afternoon." She laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet land. "Remember when we could work from dawn to dusk without thinking twice? When staying up all night with a sick horse or a crying baby did not leave us exhausted for days? We are not as young as we used to be," Cade admitted. "But I will take what we have now over youth any day. I would rather be old with you than young without you." They stood together in the darkness, comfortable in the silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Around them, the ranch was quiet except for the occasional sound of a horse shifting in the stable, the distant cry of a coyote. This land that had seemed so harsh and unforgiving when they first started out had become home, as familiar as their own heartbeats. "I love you," Nora said simply. "I think I have said it 1,000 times, but it never seems like enough. I love you, Cade Anderson. I loved you when you were a young drover making excuses to change horses. I love you now, gray-haired and stiff-jointed and still the best man I have ever known." "I love you too," he replied. "Then, now, always. You are the reason I stopped drifting. You are the reason I learned what home means." They walked back to the house hand in hand, moving slowly, savoring the cool night air and each other's presence. Inside, they prepared for bed with the ease of long practice, moving around each other in the small space, comfortable with the rhythms they had established over decades. As they lay down together, Nora thought about that girl she had been 30 years ago, standing at the relay station watching a cowboy ride in for no good reason. That girl had been lonely without quite admitting it, had been working hard without knowing what she was working toward. That girl had taken a chance on a stranger's promises and had been rewarded beyond her wildest imaginings. "Thank you," she whispered in the darkness. "For what?" Cade asked sleepily. "For coming back, for staying, for building this life with me, for 30 years of choosing me every single day." "Easiest choice I ever made," he murmured, pulling her closer. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and had built something lasting in the middle of the desert. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, unchanged and unchanging. Inside, two hearts beat in synchronized rhythm, the product of 3 decades of love and partnership and daily choice. The next morning dawned bright and hot, as mornings in Nevada tended to do. Cade woke first, as he usually did, and lay for a moment watching his wife sleep. Even in sleep, she looked strong, capable, beautiful. He thought about all the mornings they had shared, all the days and nights and seasons. He thought about 3 children raised, a ranch built from nothing, a love that had only deepened with time. Nora stirred and opened her eyes, immediately focusing on him with the alertness of someone accustomed to waking to demands and crises. But there was no crisis this morning, just another day on the ranch, another day of their life together. "Morning," she said, smiling. "Morning," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Ready for another day, with you? Always." They rose and dressed and began the familiar routines that structured their days. Feeding the horses, checking water troughs, consulting with Tommy about training schedules, reviewing accounts with Caroline when she stopped by. Sam arrived after breakfast, full of enthusiasm about a new colt he was working with. The grandchildren tumbled through at various points, bringing noise and energy. It was an ordinary day, the kind they had lived through thousands of times. But ordinariness, Cade had learned, was a gift. After years of drifting and uncertainty, of long, lonely nights sleeping under stars with no destination in mind, the simple daily rhythms of family and work and home were precious beyond measure. At 2:30 in the afternoon, he found Nora in the barn organizing tack. Without saying anything, he walked over and took her hand, pulling her outside into the bright sunshine. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "It is 2:30, he said. 30 years ago, this was the time I would ride in every day, just to see your face. Just to have a few minutes with you. I do not want to take that for granted, even now." She shook her head at him, but her eyes were soft. "You are sentimental in your old age. Maybe, but I want you to know that I still feel it, that leap in my chest when I see you. That certainty that I am exactly where I am meant to be. Time has not changed that, Nora. If anything, it has made it stronger." "I feel it too," she admitted. "Every single day. You ride in from the pastures or walk into a room and I think there he is. The man I chose. The man who chose me. The life we built together." They stood there in the afternoon sun, hands clasped, surrounded by the evidence of their life's work. The barns and corrals, the healthy horses, the house that had started small and grown as their family expanded. The sound of their grandchildren's laughter floating from somewhere nearby. The mountains purple in the distance, the desert stretching vast and beautiful under the endless sky. This was what love looked like after 30 years, Cade thought. Not the breathless urgency of those first days, though echoes of that still remained, but something deeper and more enduring. A partnership forged through shared work and shared joy and shared sorrow. A commitment renewed daily through 10,000 small acts of kindness and consideration. A home built not just of wood and stone, but of trust and respect and genuine affection. "I would do it all again," Nora said, as if reading his thoughts. "Every hard day, every worry, every moment of doubt, I would do it all again for this, for you, for what we made together." "Me too," Cade agreed. Without hesitation, without regret. "Best decision I ever made was riding into a relay station in Nevada 30 years ago and deciding that the girl hauling water was worth coming back for. Best decision I ever made was believing you when you said you would return," Nora replied, "and then choosing you every day after that." They went back to work eventually, because there was always work to be done on a ranch. But they moved through the rest of the afternoon with a renewed awareness of their blessings, a gratitude for the ordinary miracles of long partnership and enduring love. That night, after dinner and chores, and after the grandchildren had been collected by their parents and the house was quiet once more, Cade and Nora sat on the porch and watched the sun set. It was something they did most evenings, this quiet time together at the end of the day, a ritual as established as any other in their well-worn routines. "You know what I am grateful for?" Nora asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "What?" "That you were stubborn. That you kept coming back day after day, even when there was no real reason. That you did not give up when it would have been easier to just move on to the next town, the next job, the next pretty face. Your stubbornness gave us this." Cade smiled. "My stubbornness? What about yours?" You could have dismissed me as just another drifter. You could have protected your heart, played it safe. But you took a chance. You let me in. Your courage gave us this just as much as my stubbornness. Maybe we were both right, both stubborn and brave in the ways we needed to be. Maybe we were exactly what each other needed, Cade said. At exactly the right time. In exactly the right place, even if that place was the middle of the Nevada desert. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks and purples. The temperature dropped quickly, as it always did in the desert, the day's heat dissipating into the vast emptiness. Stars began to emerge one by one until the sky was full of them. They sat together until the night was fully dark and the temperature had dropped enough to drive them inside. They prepared for bed, said their goodnights to Sam, who was staying over in his old room, and retired to their own bedroom. In the darkness, Nora thought about all the nights they had shared, all the times they had lain down together at the end of a long day. Thousands upon thousands of nights, each one a small miracle of companionship and intimacy. She thought about the young woman she had been, unsure of what her future held, working at a relay station in the middle of nowhere. That woman had hoped for something more, even if she could not have articulated what that more might be. And then a cowboy had ridden in one afternoon and everything had changed. "Cade," she whispered. "Yeah, thank you for seeing me. For really seeing me, not just the work I did or the useful help I could provide. Thank you for seeing something worth coming back for." He rolled to face her, though it was too dark to see more than silhouettes. There was always something worth coming back for, from the very first day. You were strong and beautiful and capable, but there was also something in your eyes, a kind of loneliness that matched my own, maybe, a looking for something more. I saw that and I thought, maybe this could be something. Maybe she is what I have been searching for without knowing it. I was searching too, Nora admitted. I did not realize it until you showed up, but I was, for exactly this, for exactly you. They fell asleep holding hands as they had done for 30 years, fingers intertwined under the covers. Two people who had found each other in the middle of nowhere and had built everything from that initial connection. Two people who had chosen love and partnership and hard work, who had weathered storms and celebrated joys, who had raised children and built a legacy. In the years that followed, they continued their life together, moving gradually into elderhood with grace and good humor. Cade's hair went completely white, and he moved more slowly, but he still spent every day working with the horses he loved. Nora's hands grew more arthritic, but she still managed the household and kept meticulous records of the ranch's operations. They watched their grandchildren grow and begin to have children of their own. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and the small daily victories that make up a life. They faced losses too, the death of friends and neighbors, Catherine's passing when she was 81, the inevitable sorrows that come with time. But through it all, they had each other. The partnership forged in those early days at the relay station only strengthened with the years. They learned to read each other's moods with a glance, to provide support without being asked, to laugh at shared memories that needed no explanation. On their 40th anniversary in 1904, the family threw a large celebration. The ranch was full of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren now, a sprawling extended family that had grown from that initial decision Cade made to keep riding back to see a girl's face. Tommy was 41 now and fully running the ranch with Sam's help. Caroline was 39, her daughters grown and helping manage the business side. Sam was 31, married finally to the girl he had been courting for years, with children of his own. Cade, at 67, moved stiffly from decades of hard riding and harder work. Nora, at 62, had gray hair and laugh lines deep around her eyes. But when they looked at each other across the crowded yard, past all the people who had come to celebrate with them, their eyes still held that same spark of recognition and love. 40 years, Cade said in his speech, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. 40 years since I married the woman who changed everything. People always talk about love at first sight, about knowing immediately when you have found the right person, and maybe there is something to that. But I think real love, lasting love, is built day by day. It is built in the small moments, the quiet conversations, the shared work and shared dreams. It is built through the hard times when you choose to stay and work through problems instead of walking away. It is built through sacrifice and compromise and showing up every single day, ready to choose each other again. He paused, looking directly at Nora. This woman has been my partner in every sense of the word. We built this ranch together, raised 3 incredible children together, weathered droughts and disasters together. She has been my best friend, my confidante, my love, my home. Every choice I have made for the past 42 years, since I first rode into a relay station and saw her face, has been worthwhile because it led me to this moment, to this life, to her. There was not a dry eye in the crowd. Nora stood and walked to her husband, taking his hands in hers. I was 19 years old, she said, her voice strong despite her emotion, working at a relay station with my father, hauling water and swapping horses for travelers I would never see again. I thought that was my life, and I had made peace with it. And then this cowboy started showing up every afternoon at exactly 2:30. He did not need to change horses every single day. He was riding miles out of his way, but he kept coming back, and I started to realize he was coming back for me. She smiled at Cade, her eyes shining. You taught me what it means to be truly seen and valued. You taught me that love is not just a feeling but a daily practice. You taught me that home is not a place but a person, the one you choose to build a life with. These 40 years have been the greatest adventure of my life, and I would not trade a single day of them. They kissed while the crowd cheered, and if the kiss was gentler than those passionate embraces of their youth, it was no less meaningful. This was love tempered by time, strengthened by trials, sweetened by shared history. The party continued late into the evening with music and dancing and storytelling. The grandchildren begged for stories about the old days, about the relay station and cattle drives and how Las Vegas looked when it was barely more than a few buildings in the desert. Cade and Nora told the stories they had told 100 times before, but they never tired of the telling, never tired of remembering those early days when they were young and everything was uncertain, and all they had was determination and hope in each other. As the night deepened and guests began to drift away, Cade and Nora found themselves alone again, sitting on the porch of the house they had built together. The same stars wheeled overhead that had watched their courtship 40 years earlier. Tired? Cade asked. Exhausted, Nora admitted. But happy, so very happy. Me too. He took her hand, his grip still strong despite his years. You know what I think about sometimes? How easily it could have gone differently, if I had been assigned a different route, if you had been less kind to a dusty cowboy. If either of us had been too afraid to take a chance, all the ways we might never have found each other. But we did find each other, Nora said firmly. All those possibilities do not matter because this is the one that happened. This is the life we made, and it has been a good life, Cade. Better than I ever imagined possible. The best, he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life. The ranch prospering under Tommy and Sam's management, the family large and loving and close-knit. The legacy they had built not just in property and business, but in values passed down through generations. The example they had set of what partnership and commitment could look like when two people chose each other every single day. Eventually, they went inside, moving slowly, helping each other up the steps. They prepared for bed with the practiced ease of decades, comfortable with every aspect of each other. And when they finally lay down, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been for 40 years, both felt the profound gratitude of having lived a full life with exactly the right person. "I love you," Nora whispered into the darkness. "Still, always, forever." "Forever," Cade echoed. "That sounds about right." And in the morning, they would wake together as they had done for more than 14,000 mornings before. They would begin another day of the life they had built, surrounded by family and purpose, and the enduring love that had sustained them through 4 decades. They would work and laugh and sit together watching the sun set over the desert. Because 42 years ago, a cowboy had ridden into a relay station and decided that the girl hauling water was worth coming back for. And 19 years ago, that girl had chosen to believe in a drifter's promises. And together, they had built a love story that would endure not just for their lifetimes, but in the memories and examples passed down through generations of the family they had created together. That was the real legacy, Nora thought as she drifted toward sleep. Not the land or the horses or the money they had accumulated. The real legacy was showing their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren what committed love looked like. What it meant to choose someone every day, through good times and hard. What it meant to build a life together, brick by brick, day by day, until you had created something stronger than either of you could have managed alone. The desert night was quiet except for the usual sounds of horses shifting in the barn, the distant howl of coyotes, the whisper of wind through sage and scrub. Inside the house, 2 people slept peacefully, their breathing synchronized after 40 years of sleeping side by side. And outside, the stars wheeled overhead, watching over the ranch and the family and the love story that had started with a simple pattern of hoofbeats and had grown into something vast and enduring. A cowboy who kept riding back just to see a girl's face. A girl who had the courage to believe in possibilities. 2 people who chose each other and kept choosing and built a forever from those daily decisions to show up and work hard and love well. That was the story, and it was complete.